Have you ever paddled a canoe, napped in a hammock, savored a barbecue, smoked tobacco, tracked a hurricane across Cuba? Well, this is what the Tainos contributed to the world. Christopher Columbus arrived to the New World in 1492, sets off a fierce rivalry among European powers for colonies and riches lasting for centuries, unleashing deadly epidemics on 30 million native people living in the Americas, lacking immunity to old world diseases. Who are the Tainos? Get to know who the Tainos are as this documentary presents. The Taino, a story of Christopher Columbus and betrayal. Taino society, how did Christopher Columbus betray the Taino? Well, a brief look back at the Taino history will establish why and how they were betrayed during 1400 and 1500s. 3 parts of Taino history will be examined: before Columbus' arrival, Columbus's arrival, and after Columbus's arrival. The Tainos were an indigenous native group of people, Indians, who inhabited areas of the Caribbean. The exact origin of the Taino is unknown, believed to have come from the northern coast of South America, specifically present-day Venezuela on the Orinoco River Delta as part of the Arawak Indian tribe. Around 400 BC, the Arawak trade began using the tribe began using the Caribbean waterways to advance their culture and expand their territory. They had ocean-going canoes, which could hold as many as 100 people. They were skilled people, farmers producing yucca, yams and potatoes, maize and beans. They were inventors. They strained cyanide from yucca yams. They used plants for medicinal purposes, and they played games with rubber balls. Tainos never developed a written language, but they wrote music and poetry. They were crafters as well. They crafted exquisite pottery, wove intricate belts from dyed cotton, and carved images from wood, stone, and shell and bones. Taino believed to be the first natives to encounter the Spanish. Spanish chroniclers describe Taino towns as densely settled, well-organized, and widely dispersed, having complex hierarchical religion, political, and social systems. At the time of Columbus's exploration, the Taino were the most numerous indigenous people of the Caribbean, and by 1550, the Taino were close to extinction. As Christopher Columbus prepared for the voyage in the search of the East Indies, he never imagined that he would navigate a wrong turn using an incorrect map. Instead of reaching his desired target of India, he unexpectedly arrived on the Bahamian island of Guadalajara, San Salvador, in 1492. First meeting native Arawak tribe, Columbus described them as naked as the day they were born, calling them Indians, thinking he had reached the East Indies. However, these natives refer to themselves by the names of localities in which they lived. Arawaks later became known as the Taino, a name given by ethnohistorians meaning good and noble characteristics Columbus's people claim when they describe them. In 1492, Bahamas, the Taino expressed Columbus with their generosity, giving all that they possessed for anything given to them. They were well built with handsome bodies and good faces. They do not carry arms or know them. They should be good servants. It is said that Columbus noticed 2 things about the Tainos. They were gold jewelry, and their most advanced weapons was the spear, stating, "With 50 men, we can subjugate them all and make them whatever we want from them." Pope Alexander VI granted Spain and Portugal all of the lands in the Americas which were not under Christian rule, decreeing that barbarous nations be overthrown and brought to the faith itself. In 1493, Columbus' second voyage to the Caribbean itself, island Hispaniola, proved to be deadly, with a fleet of cattle infected with an influenza virus that swept through the Taino, killing countless numbers as it spread to Cuba and Florida along Taino trade routes. By 1494, Hispaniola's northern coast was the site of Columbus's first colony in the Americas, La Isabela, in which the natives and Spanish lived peacefully together. However, the Taino did not know about the plans Columbus had for them. From 1493 to 1550, European diseases for which the Taino had no immunity would prove to be deadly in epic proportions as the natives fell prey to measles, mumps, chickenpox, smallpox, diphtheria, influenza, pneumonia, typhoid, and the common cold. 1 year later, 1495, after a brief period of coexistence, relations between the newcomers and native deteriorated. Spanish removed men from villages to work in gold mines and colonial plantations. Taino could not plant crops. They began to starve. Some committed suicide to avoid subjugation. Hundreds fell in fighting with the Spaniards, while untold numbers fled to the remote regions beyond colonial control. Taino leaders had enough, and tens of thousands of Taino warriors gathered for battle with 200 Spaniards. They did not have experience in European battle style. It began with 20 Spanish warriors, fully armored and riding with horses through their ranks, inflicting great damages with their swords and lances. Then foot soldiers fired their guns, a terrifying weapon to those who had never encountered it. Finally, the Spanish set loose their large dogs trained to kill humans upon the Taino warrior. Following their defeat, the Taino accepted their status as Spanish subjects. The Spanish demanded that every man over the age of 14 provided them with little copper bell filled with gold every 3 months. Columbus made La Taina, the land of the Tainos, into living hell. It went way beyond simply killing those who fought Spanish rule. The Spanish had the Tainos drilled, cut up into pieces like sheep, ran down by hunting dogs, and torn to pieces, strung up and buried alive, 13 at a time, in memory of Jesus and his 12 apostles. Killed women and children, even babies, by throwing them against rocks and into rivers and laughing about it. They cut off pieces of Tainos for entertainment, cut off their heads for practice, raped women and girls, and brought back syphilis to Europe. They even raped the wife of a king. These mass killings became known as the Taino Genocide, 1492 to 1518, where the Spanish wiped out most of the Tainos, dividing the remaining Tainos among themselves to teach them the Christian faith. According to one estimate, genocide and disease wiped out 3 million of the 3.5 million Tainos. That's 85%. Most were already dead when smallpox arrived in 1518, with few Taino workers left. The Spanish brought in African slaves to replace the Tainos. Columbus took Taino kindness for weakness, implemented his plan of betrayal through greed and domination. Europeans' enslavement of Native Americans began with Columbus bringing Taino slaves to Spain on his return journeys. About 50,000 Tainos died within 2 years of Columbus's arrival, and by 1510 the Taino population had declined by nearly 90%, primarily from European diseases, but also from brutal treatment. A new source of forced labor was required. In 1518, the Spanish king allowed the importation of slaves directly from Africa. Previously, they had been Spanish-born Africans, and the Atlantic slave trade to the Western Hemisphere began to earnest. However, Taino influences survived and today appear in the beliefs, religions, language, and music of Caribbean culture.